Hello, Yerl, and welcome to today's lesson. Today is the start of your advancement. This will go over 2 lessons, so I'll also have a link for you to look at next time document. But the way this will work, the hour and a half paper, I will start by introducing the question to you, talk through what you need to do to answer each, and I'll let you watch, and then move to a point where it will let you know that going in the second lessons part of the video. In the second lesson section of the video, I'll explain in more detail to answer the question. So first time round, I'll go through each question, talking about what you should be finished, showing you sentence starters and some structure, which will be available for you in the resources area on the assignment. And the test paper is also there. To answer your test paper, you need to write on the blank word provided, and once you finish, save and submit that. Save and submit. So I'll get into today's lesson and I'll explain as we go through. So our objectives are to visit, evaluate the conflict attention unit. Our outcomes are we're looking at outlining, explaining, evaluating, analysing. So there are usual sets of skills. I'll explain how each of them apply to each question in particular through. So in terms of our intent, why are we learning this? What's the point of this? This is to assess what you know from one of your 3 GCSEs. This is your conflict and tension unit that you've done this year with me. And we'll also be going over your previous 2 units. So Germany, from Kaiser through to Hitler, which you did in year 9, and your medicine unit, which you did in year 10. We'll be looking at both of those as well. So first, your first question. This is a source that you'll see before. I mean, we will practice writing about before. If you've got your books with you, you'll be able to look in that and see the feedback that I've given you. We did a question like this before. So study source A, source booklet. So it poses Germany. How do you know? Explain your answering source and your contextual knowledge. So we can see in this source, I'll just give some pointers. We've got the rope around the man. That says the armistice terms. We see from the bottom that this man that's being arrested represents Germany. Put G there. You can see that this man, this policeman, dressed like a typical British policeman. He's got the hat that you'll see policemen wearing. And this outfit is typical French policeman. So we can see that a French and British policeman are arresting Germany and they're using terms of the armistice to tie him up. That'd be your first point. How you are going to go about writing your answer after sentence starters. We know the source opposes, so this opposes Germany because in the cartoon picture, Germany is portrayed as a criminal. This suggests that Germany is to blame. That'd be our first point. Again, I don't want to give you too much guidance at this point. I'm giving you the sentence starters. This is about assessing what you know. At the end of this video, you'll see this question in more detail. So, a second source we've also seen before. This is a source comparison question. So, how useful are sources B and C to a civilian studying opinions about TFI? Use both the sources and your contextual knowledge. So, contextual knowledge we know is our own knowledge. So, I'll go for some key source for you, sure we're direction, and then I'll explain how we can use some sentence starters. So, up here we can see bats circling. Here we can see a vampire sucking blood from a woman, and we see here the weapons and the armor are down on the floor, suggesting that the woman is defenseless. We can see from the top of the source, this from a German newspaper, so we know there's a German point of view. published in July 1919, so just after the Tsar has been Clemenceau. We know he is the French leader. And we know that this one here represents Germany, as we're told all of this. So this is just reading our source, seeing what we can find. Through source C, so J.M. Keynes is the economic consequences. Keynes was a key economic theorist who worked for the government, and he published in 1919. And as we can see here, he was a leading economist who worked for the British government, but he resigned in protest after the Treaty of Versailles. We know that it doesn't agree with the British establishment. So it is a British view, but not a mainstream British view. Yeah, so nations should not morally visit on the children of their enemies, wrongdoings of their parents and rulers. So think about what he might be talking about there. Something that he's passing on to the children. Again, I won't tell. I'll tell you in the feedback section at the end, because obviously you need to do the assessment yourself. Oh, so you might be talking about so the big three are preoccupied with other issues. And so wants to crush the economic life. So again, crushing Germany. Lloyd George is looking to make something acceptable for his people, so the Britain do for the people, and the American leader just wants to do the right thing to keep peace. So again, when we're writing our answer here, make sure that you have explained that it reflects ideas and beliefs. So for Keynes, we know that he is a view, but not necessarily a mainstream British view. So the government disagrees with Keynes' view. B, it's in a German newspaper, so we could say it's held by the German public. Strengths and limitations of the things to consider. So we know source B is it's not quotes from people on the street, so we just know that's what this piece felt. And again, Keynes is the view of one person from within government. Our next questions, hopefully these are familiar to you because practice these two questions. So write an account of events in Manchuria became an international crisis. What you should be looking to do when you're doing a write account question, you need to go through the events in order. So what happened and when. So we're talking about Manchuria crisis. Personally, I would before the year 1930. I would start in 1979 talking about Wall Street crash. Why was Japan in a situation that it felt it had to invade China, so the Manchuria region? Did that happen? What were the consequences of this? That's where we're thinking about the League of Nations and their slow respond, and what impact of those economic sanctions. Why did they not necessarily? Your set starters hitting your key points. So we've got Japan invade because it needed money to the crash. This led to an international crisis. We can see in our question came back to our using a cab. It created this for who was the crisis for. I was the one because So the crisis was the League of Nations, because we're now in a situation that they had to respond, and that's where you will have detail about how they had to respond. And finally, question 4. The Nazi-Soviet Pact was the main reason for the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939, unfortunately. So this question is worth the most marks here, it's worth 16 marks, and then an additional 4 for your spelling, punctuation, and grammar. As you can see, you've been given 20 minutes to do this, plus an extra minutes to plan and think. When writing this out, you need to consider a range of factors. So the first factor must be a given factor from the question. So the Nazi-Soviet Pact was the main reason for the outbreak of war. You need to talk about the first paragraph. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? Why? If so, you need to give reasons for it. So one reason that the Nazi-Soviet Pact could be to blame for the outbreak of the Second World War is it gave Hitler the confidence that he wouldn't need to worry about having a war on 2 fronts. So remember, we looked at the map, he doesn't have to worry about having a war with France. He can just focus on a war with France. That could be your first paragraph. Your second paragraph, second reason why the war broke out is what you need to think about. And again, paragraph, you need reason. And finally, a conclusion where you show reached a clear opinion on what you think was the most to blame for the war. Remember to be thinking about short-term, long-term trigger. Could say the Nazi-Soviet Pact is a trigger because within a week of that being signed, there is out of war, that's all and needs his confidence to have Poland. So that will be your trigger. You can also talk about short and long-term impacts if you're thinking about the Treaty of Versailles. Because it's been 20 years, you could see the long-term impact that it led to another war. But if you're talking about something else, maybe Anschluss or the invasion of Czechoslovakia, the short-term impacts of war, because they were only 1 and 2 years before the outbreak. Here are some question sheets out with any types of question you cross. These were given out to you, but I'm just putting them here at the end of the video for you to look. So here's page 1. And here is page 2. So these are guide on how to answer different exam questions. So some tips, some self-starters, how do you think? Hello and welcome to your second lesson. So this is part 2 of your lesson. So your assessment paper is going over both lessons. Once you have finished your assessment fully, this way you should be listening to this section. If you've not finished yet, stop the video and answer the question paper. So it'll take you an hour and a half. Okay, so now is our improvement time. How can we improve our answers? What sort of things should we make sure we're including? So I'll get my green pen out. You should as well. Remember, we're focused on the armistice terms. We've said the criminal is Germany. We've said one policeman is Britain, and the other represents France. And we can see he's giving him the rope. So this is published in Britain in 1919. So we know that this is a digital. And I'll go through the answers, how you should have an answer that looks. So we know that the source opposes Germany, just from our question, because in the cartoon we could see British and French policemen. So we see that Germany is portrayed as a criminal, and this suggests that Germany deserves punishing. This cartoon was published in Britain and reflects how many British people felt, because, and we can say that British people blamed Germany for starting the war. So that's our first question. Question 2. How useful are sources B and C? So you need to talk about each of the sources individually. So first we'll talk about source B. We know that source B is critical of the Treaty of Versailles. It's useful to a historian, gives us a German view. I'll highlight some of the key features for you. So we've got bats that show France and Britain waiting outside, ready to turn. So we can see France is already stuck. The UK and Britain are outside, waiting for their turn. We can see that Germany is the defenseless woman on bed who is having her blood taken by France, and we can see that she's defenseless due to the armor being down on the floor here. The taking of the blood can say that it is symbolic, represents what France is doing to Germany. So the blood could represent the land that's being taken from Germany. It could represent money that's been from Germany in the form of reparations. And then when we're talking about the usefulness of this source, we can say that it's very useful for a historian who's studying opinions about Versailles. It shows a German opinion. That's its strength. We're seeing a German opinion from the time it's a prime source. Obviously, a limitation is this is only showing us a German opinion and no one else. That's what we'll get in source C. So source C is from the point of a British economist. So we know that this is a view that important people in British society had in 1919. However, we know that he quit his government job in protest when he knew what Treaty of Versailles was going to be. So 3 weeks before it was signed, he quit in protest because he knew what would be in it. So that shows us that this reflects the attitudes of some people in Britain, not all the people. An example of what content we've got in here is the visits of children on their enemies. So should not be punishing children for what their parents did. That's talking about the idea of the reparations, which are such a long amount Germany will be paying for them long into the future, meaning the children are paying for what their parents did wrong, which he disagrees with. He also feels all of the countries involved have had their own agendas, so they've all had different things they've wanted, and it's led to Germany being punished so harshly. So Clemenceau wants to crush the economic life of his enemy. So that's saying France wants to crush Germany. Lloyd George wants to bring home something that'll be for a week. So it's saying Lloyd George, Prime Minister, just wants to keep Britain happy for now. He's not thinking about what the long-term problems the treaty cause. He just wants to make the British people happy with punishment, not thinking about long-term. And President Woodrow Wilson did nothing that was just right. He was just hoping for peace. He was after his own eyes. And here, key quote, he says it won't turn them into good neighbours. So they're not, this Treaty of Versailles isn't lead peace. It's not a long-term solution, is his view. So you know the two different views of the sources. You just need to insert those into sentence articles. Again, any questions, just ask. These two write an account of the events of the Manchester became an international crisis. So I will just talk through this in order like timeline. So 1999, we had the Wall Street crash. This massively affected Japan because Japan's main trading partner was the USA, and it was the USA that was most affected by the Wall Street crash. They ran out of money. They weren't able to buy and sell things with Japan. What this led to was Japan needed to look for ways of getting access to important materials like coal, like oil, rubber, those sorts of things that you need if you're trying to build a modern country. They saw that China, to oversee from them, had lots of these things, and they realized their army would be able to just go in and take them. So in 1931, they invaded the Manchuria region of China, claiming that China had attacked a Japanese company in the area, so a train that was owned by a Japanese company, when in fact Japan had done it themselves. So that's why we got this crisis. What did this result in? So because of this, the League's meeting, they sent Lord Lytton, a British representative, out to Japan and China to decide what should be done. It took him over a year to come to a response what should happen. So for a year, Japan got no punishment at all. Everyone carried on like normal. At the end of that year, Lord Lytton, the League of Nations, decided that Japan should face economic sanctions. So they should be punished to do with money and trade. So Japan should be able to buy and sell goods from other countries apart from our bill. However, the failure of this is the USA wasn't in the League of Nations anyway. So you keep trading with Japan as normal, and Britain and France didn't do too much trading with Japan anyway, so it wasn't a big problem for them. Overall, this changed the way that people view nations because the League of Nations was now seen as slow, it was seen as weak, and as unwilling to go to war to protect people. And it's important as Japan itself was a member of the League of Nations and one country in the rules. Number four, Nazi-Soviet Pact was the main reason out the Second World War. As I've said, in each paragraph, you need to consider a different factor. In your first paragraph, you could talk about the Nazi-Soviet Pact being the trigger event for the war, because you'd say, within a week of signing the Nazi-Soviet Pact, Germany had in Poland, as you it didn't have to war with Russia, meaning Germany could avoid a war on two fronts. So it wouldn't have to fight Russia and France at the same time. It would only have to fight France, because France would declare war when Germany attacked Poland, but Russia wouldn't. Our second factor, so you can talk about any factor you want, of course. So maybe you could talk about German rearmament in 1933, saying that Hitler's and started building up the army was always going to lead war. And then you decide how significant, so it's highly significant, it's of limited significance, that's your choice. Maybe you could talk about long term, just as the Treaty of Versailles, saying the fact the Treaty of Versailles was viewed as being so harsh by German people, meant they were always going to look to overthrow it. And then you talk about taking land, reclaiming land, and so they did they got Sudetenland from Slovakia, they remilitarized the Rhine, and now they were looking to take back land from. So the reason they were invading Poland is they believed it should have been theirs, and the Treaty of Versailles had stolen it from them. Yeah, another factor that you can think about again, you could say another short-term factor could be it wasn't Nazi-Soviet Pact. You could say it was just the invasion of Poland on its own, and signing the Nazi-Soviet didn't mean that Germany had to invade Poland. So ultimately, you could put the blame onto Hitler and his decision to invade Poland. And then you'd say it's crucial as that was directly led to the outbreak of the Second World War, because that's why France and Britain declared war on Germany. And then finally, your conclusion, using one of your three paragraphs, decide which one you agree with most and represent your argument in your conclusion. So I hope made everything clear and giving you and allowed you to box work based on the points you've seen. Questions to me. Make sure you submit your assessment to me. Any problems or anything like that, speak to me in the Teams chat, send me an email, and I'll be happy to respond to you as quickly as I can and try and sort out what problems you have. So that's all for this week's lessons. Make sure you submit your papers.